When you choose positive, inspiring, and enriching experiences, you're giving your creative sponge the best possible water to soak up. And this not only helps you maintain a healthy, creative mindset, but it also ensures that the work you produce is a true reflection of your most inspired self. Welcome to the BDI Create Today podcast. This is a podcast where we uncover and discover the who, what, where, when, why, and how you can be creative or have more creativity. And together we'll explore the extraordinary impact creativity can have in your life, in heart, mind, body, and soul. And if we haven't met yet, I'm Beth Buffington, a licensed artist, digital illustration instructor, and a creative coach living just outside of the Windy City, Chicago. But mostly, I'm someone who is curious about how creativity can weave its way into nearly everything in our lives. Each week, we are going to look at one or more of the sparkly facets that make up the ever-changing kaleidoscope that is creativity. The Olympics were amazing this summer. Do you agree? Tom and I were happily ensconced on our couch in the evenings watching whatever sport was being showcased. I'm amazed how each individual athlete and country brought a very unique flavor to the events that made their interpretation for their sport one of a kind and truly fascinating. The Olympics were front and center in so many people's minds during those 2 glorious weeks of competition. Now, one person that was watching the Olympics really closely was my grandson, Will. And I mean, really watching the Olympics for the first time in his life. And I loved watching him watch the Olympics. When Will watches television, he has a way of absorbing almost everything that he's watching with his whole body. One evening when I was at his house, he was telling me about the Olympics, and I have to tell you this super funny story. So many things that he watched, he was watching sports events for the first time, and he wasn't always really sure what he was watching. So in his quirky way, he told me about what he had seen. And he told me that one of the events he watched was, that pokey game. And I said, pokey game? He said, yeah, you know the game where 2 people poke each other with long sticks? So long story short, I realized that he obviously wasn't entirely understanding the definition of fencing. So the title of this sport, fencing, made absolutely no sense to him. I mean, they clearly were not poking each other with fences. They were poking each other with sticks. So the description of the pokey game, well, that made perfect sense, right? But here's why I'm telling you the story of Will in the Olympics. He not only watched fencing, which didn't make a whole lot of sense to him, but he also watched diving. And this summer, he was big enough to try out the diving board at his pool for the first time. And the diving board, it became his whole summer. He learned how to go off the diving board and practice all sorts of crazy jumps. Now, not many 6-year-olds teach themselves how to do a somersault off the diving board, but he watched diving in the Olympics, and the athletes did somersaults in their dives. So he went to the pool and tried to do what he watched. And darn it, if he didn't learn to do a somersault off the diving board this summer. It was a maneuver that a 6-year-old that is all arms and legs did. And at times it seemed a little bit gangly, but it was a beautiful and a little terrifying to watch. But wow, what an achievement for him this summer. And when you talk to Will about what he learned at the pool this summer, he happily talks about his new skills. And he says, "Grandma, when I go to the Olympics, I will be a diver." What he watched were divers who were diving beautifully intricate, amazing twists and turns, and yes, somersaults into a pool. And he also learned this summer about the stories of these athletes who worked hard at the sports they had a passion for. And with learning and practice, these athletes went on to go to the Olympics and do great things. Now, I don't know if will be diving the Olympics sometime in the next 20 years, but what I do know is like a little sponge, he learned how to watch and learn and repeat the things he saw. Hello, my creative friend, and welcome back to another episode of Create Today. And if you've listened to this podcast for more than one episode, you know that I love a good metaphor. And today we're exploring a metaphor that might seem, well, a little squishy, but we're going to talk about sponges and your creativity. So bear with me, and this will all make perfect sense. And I think having metaphors to think about makes it easier for you to remember things that will do good things in your life. So now let's get to it. We've all heard the saying that children are like sponges, right? And I think the story of Will is showing you that he is quite the little child sponge. And we know that children will do and say the things they see. This phrase about being a sponge is a phrase that perfectly captures how children seem to soak up everything around them, the good, the bad, and everything in between. So let's start with the good. Like Will in the Olympics, think about children who immerse themselves in a world of something that they find fascinating, like the diving board or dinosaurs, fairy tales, superheroes, sharks, unicorns, whatever it might be. And they will have imaginative play about this thing they're fascinated with. They absorb the language, ideas, and creativity. When a child is immersed in this kind of environment of fascination, this is the child who learns to problem solve. They're more likely to develop empathy about the world and other people through the stories that they're hearing. And this rich environment provides also a rich inner world that serves as a foundation that will be perfect for building a strong future of continued learning. These are the advantages of childhood sponges who are surrounded with positive environments. They soak up goodness that is nourishing. But just as a sponge can soak up goodness, it can also absorb toxic spills. So now let's look at the opposite side and picture a child who might be exposed to negativity or unhealthy environments. These things, just like harmful chemicals in a sponge, can be difficult to squeeze out and get rid of later on. Children might be in an environment that is immersing them in situations where they feel fear and insecurity or limiting beliefs about themselves or other people. So it's important to watch carefully where children and their child sponges are placed and be mindful constantly about what they're absorbing, the good and the bad. And here's where we expand this metaphor. I want you to think about your creativity like a sponge. Just like a child, our creative minds absorb what we expose our creativity to. So surround yourself with inspiring art, uplifting people, and enriching experiences, and your creativity will soak it all in. Your ideas will have a better chance of flourishing. Your imagination will stretch and grow, and your work will reflect the confidence and the richness of what your creative sponge has absorbed. But if you're not careful, your creativity can also soak up the not so good stuff. So, constant exposure to criticism from other people or from your inner critic, this can instill the fear of failure or even burnout from the daily grind of uninspiring routines. This can wring your creativity dry. Or if you're constantly pouring dirty water onto a sponge, it can become heavy and sluggish, and eventually it gets clogged and stained with this tainted water. And it can't absorb anything new, even if the water is clean and pure. So, what's the takeaway here? Okay, let's get to it. But I do want you to hang on with me for just a second more, still with sponge in hand. I want you to be mindful of what you let your sponge sit in, what you soak up. The quality of whatever you are taking in will ultimately determine the quality of what you can squeeze out. Does that make sense? Once you've squeezed out the sponge, you need to be able to refill it with similar inspiring goodness to keep your creativity fresh and ready to take on more of the goodness that you have immersed it into. So, my friend, take a moment right now and think metaphorically. What are you soaking your creativity in right now? Is it something that is inspiring? Is it sparking your imagination? Is it making you excited to learn new things? Or do you feel you are surrounded by toxic waters that are clouding your vision and reducing your confidence and clogging your energy with bad vibes of maybe inner criticism or FOMO or negativity and fear? If you're thinking, my creativity has been soaking in something toxic, first, don't feel alone. This can happen, and it will happen at times to all of us. But here's the good news. If you know that you've been soaking in something toxic, it's not too late to rinse out your creative sponge and transition it to somewhere where it can soak up inspiration and energy and productivity. Because creativity, like a sponge, can be cleaned, it can be renewed, and it can be revived to soak up fresh and inspiring ideas again. Now let's take a quick break and listen to a word from our sponsor. And my friend, that would be me. Are you interested in exploring your creativity with Procreate on your iPad? Get my free Kickstart video. It's going to give you a beautiful tour of how to use Procreate to create your own art. You'll get information about brush libraries, layer and layer options, explanations of the tool icons, and so much more. Just go to www.bdi-create.today/Kickstart to get my free Procreate Kickstart video. So let's take a look at what we need to be on the watch for as far as toxicity that could be harming our creativity. So let's first talk about external influences. External influences, they play a huge role in shaping our creativity, and sometimes in ways we don't even realize. So here's a few examples of external influences that you should be mindful of. Now, when we let ourselves binge on content like true crime TV shows or books or podcasts, we might be drawn in by the suspense and the storytelling, and these genres can be super fascinating. But if they become a large source of input into our day, they can start to color and cloud the way we think and the way we create. So I remember watching reruns one time of a true crime show. It was a Saturday and it was kind of rainy, and I binged on a few of these episodes. And later in the afternoon, it was time to take Raz for a walk. And in the Midwest in winter, it gets dark around 5 o'clock. So it wasn't late. It was just you know, dark. The unusual fear I felt as I walked Raz in our quiet neighborhood that evening was over the top because I had binged on this true crime show. I had this super creepy feeling that someone was waiting to get me around every tree and bush and house that I walked past. Has this ever happened to you? Now, I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only one that has an imagination that easily runs wild. But Raspberry, well, I tell you what, she was not affected by my ridiculousness. She happily sniffed her way around the block because there was nothing to fear. I had walked this walk the day before and did not have a problem. The jumpiness and the fright that I gave myself during that walk, well, it's now a little bit laughable, but at the time, I could hardly wait to get back to the house. And the reason was I'd let my sponge sit in the fright and the apprehension that was created by watching and binging true crime all afternoon. True crime, well, it focuses on the darker aspects of human nature: fear, anxiety, distrust. And when these themes dominate our mental space, they can seep into our creative process. Sometimes this can make our life seem unsafe or pessimistic. Now, I realize that exploring darker themes in creativity, it's not all bad. Some incredible art and writing comes from exploring these depths. But if it's the only thing we are absorbing, it might limit our creative range. So you need to be mindful of what you can manage and really examine your outlook on life and determine if binging on a certain television show might be causing your creativity to become tainted. Now, let's also look at the constant stream of external influences in the news, especially in our world that is full of politics and reports of crime and war. The news, my friend, is designed to grab our attention by highlighting the most dramatic stories. And the saying, if it bleeds, it leads, that's the name of the game. The negative events in the world are most of what our daily news consists of. So at times it can seem like nothing good ever happens. So when we expose ourselves to negative news day in and day out, it can lead to a kind of, well, mental fatigue. And this can stifle creativity by the stress and the sense of overwhelm and helplessness that comes from feeling like the world is just chaotic and we are trapped in it. And it can be hard to come up with new ideas when your mind is weighed down by too much external pressure. And then let's not forget social media, where we are bombarded with images, opinions, and content that is designed to keep us scrolling. Social media can be a source of inspiration, but it can also be a major distraction and an incredible drain on our creativity. When we spend too much time scrolling, we often start to see, and our brain registers these images as reality. And then we can't help but compare ourselves to the perfections that we perceive everyone else's world to be. Clean houses, expensive and perfect vacations, clean and well-behaved children, perfectly trained pets, businesses that are successful, and for us creatives, we seem to only see artwork that flows freely from sparkly, beautiful, authentic, seemingly uncluttered creative minds. So it's no wonder that we begin to doubt our own creative abilities, or we feel like we need to conform with what's trending. That seems to work. That must be what I need to do. But when we soak up the media mirage as reality, this can drain our creative energy and make it harder to tap into our creative passions and find our unique artistic voice. Now, in addition to external, influences, we also need to look internally at how we influence ourselves through our own thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. And these internal influences can be just as powerful in shaping our creativity for better or for worse. Negative self talk and listening to our tough talking inner critic too much is like pouring mud into your creative sponge. Thoughts like, I'm not good enough, or why bother? No one will like my ideas. These thoughts can become toxic, blocking the flow of ideas and draining your creative energy. So, stress, perfectionism, and fear of failure are all internal factors that can weigh down your creativity, making it harder to take risks, explore new ideas, or even get started on a project. So it's essential to recognize when these internal influences are clogging your creative confidence. It's essential to recognize when these internal influences are clogging your creative confidence. It's important to work on replacing these negative internal influences with positive, encouraging thoughts about yourself. When was the last time you talked to yourself like you talk to your good friends? By working to cultivate a mindset of self-compassion, curiosity, and openness, you can ensure that your inner environment is going to nurture your creativity. And the key here is to be intentional about what we immerse ourselves in, both externally and internally. Because just like a sponge needs clean water to stay effective, our creativity needs to absorb nourishing input in order for it to thrive. So, my friend, it's okay to enjoy true crime or to keep up with the news, but it's important to balance these things with other content that is uplifting and inspiring and energizing to us. And this could be art and nature or music or anything that makes us feel more connected to our creative selves. And it's also okay to be strict with yourself internally. But remember to balance a busy work regimen with rest. And instead of beating yourself up when you run into a problem, think of a mistake or a failure as an opportunity to grow and learn from something that just didn't go perfectly. And that's okay. We all can grow stronger when we are faced with a storm now and again. And remember to celebrate your achievements, good and bad. Make that a regular part of your week. So, my friend, think about what you should and could celebrate today. I think on that. Now, when we're mindful of what we absorb, we give our creativity the best chance to flourish because it is less burdened by the weight of negativity or distraction from the external influences of the world and the internal influences of our busy brain. Now that we've talked about watching for negative impact on our creativity from both internal and external influences, let's determine how we can use this sponge metaphor to make us happier and healthier with our creativity in heart, mind, body, and soul. Let's look at how we can ensure that our creative sponge is soaking up the good stuff. Here's a list of ways you can mindfully and purposely immerse yourself in experiences and content that will nourish your creativity. Number one, spend time in nature. Nature is one of the most powerful sources of inspiration. Letting your whole self get out into the light of the sun in either blue skies or cloudy skies, it is a benefit to your health and your creativity. Whether it's a walk in the park, a hike in the mountains, or simply just sitting in your garden, being in nature helps clear your mind And the calming sights and sounds of nature reduces stress and will in turn replenish your, well, sticking with the metaphor, replenish the goodness that you are absorbing in your creative sponge. Number 2, read books that inspire. Instead of always reaching for the latest thriller or heavy drama, try reading books or watching television that is uplifting, will educate and inspire you. This can be anything from classic literature to biographies of people that you admire, to books on creativity and mindfulness. Oh, so many things to explore. The ideas and perspectives that you gain from these kinds of reads or television watching can open up new pathways in your creative work. You don't have to give up your fascination with crime and mysteries, but give your brain a balance. Let it experience a wealth of new knowledge and stories. Number 3, engage with positive arts and media. So surround yourself with art and music and film and media that inspires and uplifts you. Positive, new creative content can help you tap into your own artistic voice, and it will provide new insights or ideas that you might not have even considered. Number 4, practice mindfulness or meditation. Mindfulness practices like meditation, yoga, or simply sitting quietly can help clear mental clutter and make space for new ideas and creativity. When your mind is calm or just calmer, you're more likely to experience those aha moments where everything just clicks into place. And if you're thinking secretly, I don't have time to just sit, my friend, just give yourself 10 minutes each day for maybe a week and see what happens. Number 5, connect with other creatives. So taking time to have conversations with friends who inspire you. This is a luxurious way to pamper yourself. And a super wise investment for your creativity is spending time with other creative people who understand your challenges about just being creative. This is vital to your creative health. So consider joining a community like the Create.today community. It is a perfect way to meet other creatives, especially since it's often hard to find others in your area who have the same passions about their art like you do. Create.today also has workshops where you can enjoy creative challenges that will help you see and experience new facets of creativity or help you strengthen your creative confidence through guided mindset masterminds. Creative communities like Create.today can help you see your own work and your potential in a new light and push your creativity farther than you ever dreamed. Number 6, just unplug. Give yourself regular breaks from technology and social media. Disconnecting allows your mind to rest and recharge. So freeing up space for creativity to flow, that's really important. And when you unplug regularly, you might find that new ideas come more easily and your creativity feels refreshed more often. So start by unplugging for maybe an hour or two a day, and then increase this time to maybe one day a week of being entirely unplugged. Give it a try. Number 7, engage in playful activities. This is easy. Just don't forget the power of play. Engage in activities that are just fun, whether it's doodling or trying out a new game or a craft or a hobby. This kind of play stimulates creativity by freeing your mind from the constraints of serious work. And this kind of freedom, where there's no right or wrong, you're just having fun. This kind of freedom allows you to experiment and explore without pressure. And when you're mindful of what your creativity is absorbing, you're essentially curating the environment that literally feeds your creativity. When you choose positive, inspiring, and enriching experiences, you're giving your creative sponge the best possible water to soak up. And this not only helps you maintain a healthy creative mindset, but it also ensures that the work you produce is a true reflection of your most inspired self. So, next time you're considering what to watch on TV or what book to read, or you find yourself mindlessly scrolling on your phone, ask yourself this: am I choosing an activity that will nourish and strengthen me? A good thought. Remember, your creativity is a precious resource. Protect it, my friend, by being mindful of what you let into your world. And when you choose wisely, watch as your ideas grow brighter and more vibrant and more creatively you. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd be ever so grateful if you'd share the Create Today podcast with your creative friends and family. And remember, in my world, everyone is creative. So basically, share this podcast throughout the land. Your support helps us grow the Create Today community and share the goodness of being happier and healthier through a daily creative practice. And who knows, sharing this episode might just inspire someone to come back to a creative practice, to a creative sponge that they have left sitting dry and unattended for years. Do you know someone like that? Could it be you? Until next time, my friend, remember to think about what your creative sponge is soaking up right now. And think about that as often as possible. Nourish yourself in an environment that will keep you filled with inspiration and new ideas. So keep soaking up the good stuff. Stay filled to the brim with inspiration. And no matter what, remember to stay creative, my friend. And if you found value in today's creative chat and you want to continue nurturing your creative journey, I personally invite you to join the Create Today community. Inside this beautiful community, you can explore free tutorials, participate in workshops, enroll in courses, and benefit from personalized coaching opportunities. Just visit www.bdi-create.today to become part of this vibrant community of beautiful creatives. Thank you for joining me on this episode of BDI Create Today. Remember, creativity is a daily journey, and every step you take, no matter how small, contributes to your growth. And it doesn't matter how fast you go, my friend, as long as you don't stop.